Hello and welcome to Under the Sticks, a podcast brought to you by PRO14 Rugby. My name is Andy McGeady. In our COVID world, we move from flattening the curve to generally fattening and more curves. Joining me today, I have the curviest of curvy, Mr. Paul Williams. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I've ordered my trainers. I will be a runner. This is how desperate times have got. Sean Holley, how are you?
Good, thanks. Not a runner, but a static cyclist for my charity sins. But yeah, I'm good, thanks. Bit tired. Looking forward to another marathon on the bike tomorrow.
Excellent. Yeah, you've been very active. Adam Redmond, where are you this week?
Where I'm in Bloemfontein. Had one or two queries from slightly east of my former position as to me showing my true colours, and to that response I said to that particular head of comms, if you send me your Euro 88 Dutch away jersey, I will wear it on the podcast. So Dragons fans and Mr. Martin Bicknell, you get that jersey in the post and I will don it, and we will have Rodney Parade in the background.
There we go.
I like it. Well,
I don't want to quite say if you
Go
send
on.
it, I will wear it, but you know.
That's what he means.
It is, yeah. That is exactly what he means. Standards are, well, anyway, we'll move quickly on. We did talk about games of the past last week, and South Africa Lions 2009 second test. I was watching it. Adam, you were watching it. Sean, were you watching it?
Yeah, what a game. I mean, I commented off air, and I think I did last time, if you're trying to match it up, it's Hagler versus Hearns for boxing fans. It's no holds barred. It's literally all on the line. Forget technique. Forget tactics. We're going at each other because everything's on the line this one, and because it's a second test. And that's the reason. So really enjoyed it, actually. Saw things that I hadn't seen before.
It's amazing because when you watch it, and you watch it at the time, and you're watching it with all the emotion and you're getting so upset about different things and whatever, and then you watch it sort of in the cold light of day. Yeah, so like the first 6 minutes could warrant a 25-minute conversation. So much goes on in it. It's it's brilliant, and I don't want to ruin the surprise, but we should have one of the participants of that game buzzing into the meeting pretty soon, and I won't reveal his identity just in case it turns out his internet's not working. But yeah, I mean, and even at one point, like, you're 25 minutes in, and like there's just this 30-40 second of just forward play, and in the middle of it, Brian O'Driscoll's just popping up trying to have a go at like guys twice his size, and it has everything. It just has everything.
Yeah, I think it's Brian O'Driscoll that sums that game up, because like you say, he's trying to take down beasts twice his size, and without any care. Like Sean says, there's no technique. It's just, I'm coming up, and one of you's having this somewhere.
And I also
That's what he did.
Like, it was such a like what Gordon Darcy and Brian O'Driscoll did for years as a centre pairing was incredible when you consider the way the game changed and their physical stature. But when you saw O'Driscoll able to play off Jamie Roberts and play off a big man who could play, and the space that created, I wonder how high in the rankings, if you put the truth serum into Mr. O'Driscoll, where he'd put Jamie Roberts as a centre partner.
Oh, yeah. Controversial.
Yeah.
Well, you got to think back to 2001. He played with Hendo, didn't he? He played with Henderson, who was, not doing him a disservice. He was a bustling, big ball carrying, and Brian fed off him pretty well. They formed a real good partnership. So Jamie was a bit more of a direct version, I would imagine. Big man, could free his arms up and get across a gain line. And I'm probably ideally suited for a Springbok series, wasn't he?
Oh yeah.
I still watching that game. I could not get over the gouge. It took me, it was 22 seconds in, and it took me until at least 5 minutes of real time watching it to kind of move on and start following the game again. It was extraordinary.
No. And that's only 2009. It's not like it's 1975.
No.
You know, that's pretty soon in rugby history. You know, that's not long ago. For that to be given a yellow card, it's unbelievable.
But even watching it watching it, you've got the touch judge talking to the referee, and how he relayed that on the field, making a decision. It just bore no resemblance to what actually happened. But even aside from that, you just wonder what was going through Berger's mind. It was a crazy bit of intimidation.
Yeah, and then on the floor, which is even worse. You know, it's not even like he's standing up and you can say, "Oh, my arm slipped in the ruck" or whatever. It was you know, he knew what he was doing.
It's sacrosanct, isn't it? You know,
awful.
I used to hate it, and I used to worry because in other countries it is part of the culture of the game, or was part of the culture of the game. I remember, I'm going off on a story here, lad. We played
in the Anglo-Welsh Cup.
It wasn't. It was the Heineken Cup.
There we go.
So round 1 was Leicester Tigers, and there was a gouging incident on one of our players who happened to be the captain, and the sighting officer had seen it, and it was after post-match. He asked to see this player, and I went in as well, and I milked it. So I got the doc in and everything because I there's no way. And it was clearly he had things around his eyes, and the player wouldn't press charges. He said, "I don't want anything to do with it. It's a Lions year." Funny enough, I could be on a Lions over this guy. It happens in the game. Forget it. And I said, "Man, you could have lost your eye." No, I'm not pushing any further. Fast forward to the round 6 in the reverse game against the same team, and I'll say the name because it's in history, and he was banned for it. Martin Corrie was caught gouging one of our players. That's when I had the dust up with cockers in the tunnel.
Right.
Martin Corrie was caught gouging. He was cited. He was getting a 10-week ban. And I looked at our player and I said, "Look, you know, see, this thing is going on, and we can't have it in our game." So I don't like that sort of stuff. There's intimidation, there's chat, and there's this, that, and the other. But
yeah. And like you say, you know, it can be part of cultures. And if Sean's doing a story, I'm mentioning Twitter, right? I had a row with the head coach of Racing Metro when Gonzalo Quesada was there. And I tweeted that how gouging was endemic, particularly in Pro D2. And then I said that it's still carried up into the top 14. And he had a massive pop at me saying, "You don't know anything about French rugby," which I don't. But I watch it and I can tell when someone's being gouged because they've had a card. So I don't have to be an international to understand what trying to remove someone's eye is from their face. It's really easy. And he denied it. And then I had a lot then of players, you'll love it, Adam, via DM saying, "You're totally right. It is part of the culture." Loads of players down there saying, "I played in Pro D2 when they came up, and those sides is endemic." And especially in the middle of those rucks, when there were players standing on their feet and it looks, you know, you can say it was my arm slipped or whatever it was. And he said, it's just part of French rugby. So yeah, I think it is culturally part of some bits of the game.
So we have our participant from this Lions box test. So I'm just going to let him into the meeting. But Andy, continue.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to go and think you weren't too far off with Stade Francais, because I'm going back to do you remember the Stade Ulster match where Stade had 2 players cited for gouging in the same match?
Yes.
Like,
yeah,
this is not new. Speaking of Ulster, we have someone trying to dial in. Where is he?
Oh, hello.
There he is.
Hey,
Hey guys,
Tommy,
how
Bowe.
are you? Andy, how's things? I like the background.
We're all right. Yeah, it's when I was born. I'm a little older. Old school.
Yeah, looks like a nice haircut. Similar haircut anyway.
Thanks very much. COVID's treating you well too, my friend. Yeah.
Yes, the hair and beard are coming on well. How are we getting on, guys?
how you doing, Bowe, right?
Sean, how's things? The colour, you look like you've been in Portugal.
I've been Sampa Tablo. You know how beautiful that is, mate.
Oh, yes, that's it.
Hair's growing a bit long, showing the grey, but doing all right.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for having me in.
Thanks for making a bit of time.
Yeah, we were talking about last week into this week, and we started the show looking back at the second Lions test in South Africa from 2009, because we were kind of building up to it, and then it was on the telly at the weekend. We all got up to watch it, but you were playing in it. Hell of a game.
Paul. Yeah, to be honest with you, I actually haven't watched the full game back. It still kills me a little bit. It's one that definitely one game in my whole career that really got away. And looking back in highlights, I've looked at highlights a number of times, and I can't describe the atmosphere going to the stadium at Pretoria that day. It was the first time. I was lucky, I played against pretty much most countries around the world, but I've never gone into a stadium where the crowd are actually shaking the bus and smashing the side of the windows on the way into the stadium. It was ferocious. They were giving us the fingers. They were making all sorts of signs. And even the way the game started, you could just tell that South Africa were out for blood. And, we had to stick it to them. We had to get right back in their faces, because the week before we kind of did get bullied, certainly in the first half.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch. I mean, you guys came out really well, though. I mean, you were in control of the game, at least on the scoreboard, for a considerable amount of time. And I know what you're saying about one that got away, but if you think back to the time and you think back to how it felt going into the stadium and then taking control of the game itself, right?
Yeah.
Is there any particular incident that really jumps out that was just different to another game?
I just, in terms of, for us, feeling good, feeling like that we were really up for it, or in terms of, was there a moment in the game where it kind of changed away from us, or what?
The first one. I mean, you've had both the crowd and the Springboks trying to really get in your face, really intimidate you, really say that, sorry, what's happened last week is just going to continue. But then it looks like something changed for you.
It kind of actually happened in the team hotel before. We've all seen the Living with the Lions videos and the videos back, and I'll always remember the 97 one. But I remember the speech made by Ian McGeady before going to that game about how special this is. We were 1-0 down in the Test series, but that we fought our way back into it again. The pride of representing the Lions, the pride of representing all the people who are over there. They talked about your family, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, people who be watching, people who are there. So there was a huge, it wasn't just with your head. There was a real impetus in the heart going into this game, and we knew that we had to stand up to the Springboks. And when Luke got eye gouged in that first minute of the game and it didn't go our way, I think Scott Berger's got a yellow card. A lot of the team thought that, listen, this isn't on. These guys are trying to bully us here. And I think it was actually Draco who was the one who really set the scene and started, pulled us into a circle and said, this is war. And I can't remember exactly what happened in the game, but I just remember that we were on the front foot. We were just destroying everything that was working for us, but it was just two real lapses of concentration that got them back into two set piece tries that really kept them in the hunt. Yeah,
it was a great game too.
They were beautiful tries.
So physical. I mean, it was just the physicality of it. I'll never forget after the game. I mean, it's funny. I remember so clearly the lead up to the game, and I remember so clearly after it. Actually, what happened on the pitch is such a blur. But I've never felt more tired in a change room and more heartbroken in a change room. And I remember sitting in the change room afterwards, and you had Adam Jones. I think he'd been taken to hospital. His shoulder was dislocated. I mean, it was just a sea of bodies. It was like war. Guys were lying. All the plinths were taken. People were lying on the floor with ice bags. We felt like we've been in war, and unfortunately, we come out the wrong side.
Tommy, there's we've been involved in games like that. There's some games we were talking before you came on about a boxing analogy. Thomas Hearns against Marvin Hagler, where basically the gloves are off. Tactics and technical stuff tend to go to the window. The mist is down, and you probably can't remember much of it because of that. It's like you're involved in something. It goes things are almost in slow motion, or responses become automatic. Some of the tries obviously are so pinpoint that it's just at the height and the peak of everybody's awareness, and because it was a second test, do you think that has a contributing factor?
Sean, you just can't get over the atmosphere over there. I just, sometimes when you're on the pitch and you're trying to scream to the person next to you and they can't hear a word that you're saying, it literally was deafening, but it was all Lions supporters. I remember there was just pockets of them. And as soon as the South African anthem finished, it just went into Lions, and the whole place was pounding. And it's just one of those ones, there's certain games in your career where your heart is beating so fast, the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up, and then the game kicks off, and you feel you're in flow, and you just feel that things are going your way. And I remember, I was devastated Rob didn't give me that ball when he scored the try. There were some things that went well for me that game, some things weren't. And then even, it still breaks my heart a bit when I look back at the Jacques Fourie try where, I should have stuck a shoulder into him, knocked him into touch. Those are the sort of moments. That's nearly one of the reasons I've tried to blank it out, because, you kind of do think it's one of those moments where you think, what could have been.
It was a game as well, Tommy, where so many things for the Lions were within an inch of coming off. Breaks when guys go up the wing, and even there's a couple of times where you are just, if a ball comes a little bit earlier, you're on somebody's inside shoulder and you're away.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, and you were close for an intercept as well at one point. It just kind of escapes your fingertips.
Yeah.
But you still went in a half time kind of in control. I just wonder, in that situation when you feel like everything's so close and you're winning, what's the atmosphere like, and who's doing the talking at half time? Like, what's the scene there?
There were a lot of leaders in the team, but Paul O'Connell I was on 2 Lions tours. Paul was just incredible. He was such a calm voice, and at halftime you had the likes of Ian McGeady and you had Warren Gatland. There's some really experienced people there who, we felt good, I think, at halftime, but they took out pretty much our front row. They took out our centre pairing, and going into really the final quarter of the game, I think we were really just down to bare bones, and that's kind of what killed us in the end. It was the physicality that we were out on our feet, playing up at the high belt as well. It's just, you can train all you like. We were doing oxygen chambers. We were doing everything to try and get ourselves ready for playing up at that high altitude, but whenever you're not used to it, and in a test match as physical and as ferocious as that was, I think that the wheels maybe just came off a little bit. I know certainly my brain, you're just not able to quite concentrate fully the way you would in a normal game.
What's it like then when you after a game and you're mixing with the opposition or whatever, right? Was there anything different about that game than other test matches? Was there a different edge to it?
No, there was a story the following day. We'll maybe leave that for later. But after that game, actually a lot of the South Africans, so it was an after-match function. The Pretoria Stadium is really old school, and we went into, it's like an old cricket clubhouse. And we were kind of scratching our heads thinking, is this the after-match function? And we were all pretty battered and bruised, but the South African players all came in with cans of beer, and it didn't really feel like drinking with them, but it was one of those moments that we both teams had put it all out on the pitch. We enjoyed a beer together, but we were heartbroken. That Lions tour was probably one of the most special memories of my career. The crack that we had on and off the pitch throughout that whole tour, it just felt like something. It felt like we deserved to win a Lions series, that one. And to lose that second test the way we did with that kick at the end, it's heartbreak. But for me, and you, Andy, as an Irish supporter, we were in a similar position in the Six Nations earlier that year where Stephen Jones missed that kick. So, in that one season, I'd been on either side of it. And, it is, ecstatic feeling one side, heartbreaking the other side, and as a rugby player, you just almost get used to it.
Yeah, it's exactly the same for me, Tommy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, watching at home.
Oh, well, now I know what it's like to watch at home, and it is hard. It's hard to watch at home. Yeah.
You know, that's what I loved. I loved when Tommy came on. We've been sitting chatting about it like the geeks that we are, not Sean, but the three of us on our sofas. And then Tommy comes on and says, "Oh yeah, I played in that game," and it just makes you feel so pathetic. And it like, "Oh yeah, you were actually on that field
and
doing
you can
that."
remember it all so much better than me. Terrible.
But yeah, right. So let's get personal. Sean, what was Tommy like to coach?
He was an absolute dream, if I'm honest. Why? Because it was almost a perfect storm. I think Tommy, we've talked about this before, but we desperately wanted to sign Tommy. I did a lot of research on him, and he was the type of player we needed and we wanted, and it was the right time to get him because his curve was going up. He wasn't quite in the Irish first team at that point, so there was a chance. And it was between us and Leicester Tigers, I think, Tommy, yeah?
Yeah.
And I remember going to the interview with him and his agent, Ryan Constable, and I came out there and I thought it went really well, but I turned to Lynn Jones and I said, mate, we're up against Leicester Tigers. They were the big club at the time. But to his credit, and hindsight does play a part in this, yes, but it was a perfect storm because Tommy was really good for us, but I'd like to think we were really good for Tommy because we were on an upward curve as well. We had a good squad developing, and I'd like to think he grew with us because he maybe learned a few different ways. He learned a different culture. He then was a regular in the Irish team. He was clearly first choice and top of his game for us. And he wasn't a guy that just accepted things, and as a coach, you want that. You want feedback. So he would come with ideas. He'd question you if there was something he wasn't quite sure with. And you know what? As a player, he was fantastic. Complimented us lovely. And on top of that, he's a bloody nice guy, which is always nice as a coach. So, and he said to me once, after I'd finished and after he'd finished, he said, it wasn't like so much he was player coach. He said, you were like my mate. And I know at times that we disagreed, and I know at times he probably thought, oh, this guy's been a bit of a dick, but that was my job. But for him to say that meant that not only did he enjoy his rugby, but he enjoyed his time, and that means a lot.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I don't know if I meant to follow up on it, but Sean's right. When I moved to the Ospreys, I was 24 and I was struggling to get into the Irish team. I felt I was playing for Ulster, but I couldn't get myself into that Irish team. And 13 of the Ospreys side were part of the side that won the Six Nations Grand Slam as well. So I knew I was joining a really strong team, but I knew that if I wanted to get into that team, I was going to have to really up my game. But I'll never forget that first pre-season. It was like learning a different game again. Sean was teaching us about the blitz defense, and I used to mess it up so many times. And you had Shane Williams, you had Lee Byrne, you had Gavin Henson putting their arm around you and trying to explain where I was making the mistakes. We had somebody there filming me passing. I had to do 50 passes off my right hand, 50 passes off my left hand, and it was filmed at the start of pre-season. And then we did it again halfway through pre-season and at the end, and you could see the improvement. And those sort of things was a real kick up the ass for me. And the other thing as well is that the first day I arrived at the Ospreys, they were having a barbecue, and they all came out to meet me in the car with a bottle of Budweiser, and I knew I was joining a good squad then.
Nice.
Yeah. So when you're looking to take that next step, are there certain parts of your game that at the time at age 24 that you'd been told in Ireland, you said, listen, we need you to do this, we need you to do that? Was there homework that you were looking to do somewhere else, or was this something you discovered only after leaving?
I think I knew I needed to improve in a lot of areas of my game, Andy, but at that stage, I had just missed out on the World Cup 2 years before that. I was probably trying to concentrate too much on improving on the things I wasn't very good at instead of actually focusing on what I was good at. So playing in the old Ravenhill Stadium at that stage in the middle of December, January, February, standing on the wing, waiting for the ball to come to me, you know, you're wasting your talent. It was actually Mark McCall who was the one who said to me, your talent is getting the ball in hand and taking people on. And whenever I went to the Ospreys, Sean said to me, look at Shane Williams. He touches the ball 20 to 25 times a game. He turns up at scrum half, out half, he's never on the wing. So there was people there to model my game on. And the biggest thing is to try and impose myself on the game. It's easy to be a winger and just stand out there and maybe take the glory pass and score in the corner. But actually what happened to me with the Ospreys was that I was encouraged to give it a roving role and just turn up anywhere on the pitch, because your strength was trying to take people on and looking for mismatches.
A testament to Tommy is that having come as an out-and-out winger, 24 from Ulster, by the time he left us, he had played for the Ospreys at 11, 13, 14 and 15. Was capped by the Lions at 13. So that'll tell you the improvement he made as a player. So the versatility, that's a hell of a thing to be able to do, you know, having spent a lot of time on the wing, because in your formative years, Tommy would have been, you know, chasing kicks, hanging up in the wing, waiting for the ball. So his learning curve was steep, but he was like a sponge, receptive. The blitz defense is a classic. You look back at his career and how many interception tries, and he's lived off little things like that, which is a massive part of a winger's game. He embraced that, whereas a lot of players, it's at that time, it's a very scary thing to come into a blitz defense, because you're, and it was something I used to say to him a lot, you're 100% right or you're 100% wrong, right? You know, and that's true, you know, so it's all in. And he was the type of personality to accept that.
And I think as well, Sean, 100% right, 100% wrong. But what the big thing is that that's as a whole team. So the thing with the Ospreys is that it was about doing it as a collective. And I didn't sometimes have the confidence to go for it. But when you had Sonny Parker on your inside, or you had Lee Byrne coming up on the outside, you know, they were the sort of crutch that helped me on. And I was a young guy. I was 24 going over there. It was a big move for me to leave Ireland. Very few people left Ireland at that stage, but I knew I wanted to try something different. I wanted to challenge myself, and one of the other, you know, I wanted to get away. There was obviously Leicester Tigers with Jordan Murphy there, but there is, of course, the big thing for Ireland is that if you are out of the country, you're not going to get picked per se. Where I knew at least if I went to the Ospreys, I would be playing against an Irish province once in every 3 or 4 weeks. So for Declan Kidney, who was the coach, it was easy for him to see me because I would be playing against Leinster, Munster, Connacht or Ulster, where if I was playing in Leicester Tigers, he would have to get a flight over just to see me and maybe Jordan Murphy. So in that sense, it kind of worked both ways.
Tommy,
do you think that some of today's players are missing out with that? Because you're right, and it's actually got more stringent now. You have to be Jonathan Sexton to make it work by moving off the island.
Well, you have to be at least 20% better than anybody back in Ireland, because you can't expect to be picked if you're 50-50 with a player back in Ireland, and I think that makes sense. If you're 20, 25 to 30% better and playing out of your skin, and there's no better option in Ireland, then I think
I like the idea of players going at the time you went, though, sort of at 23, 24. You've been around a little while. I mean, you were capped for Ireland pretty young. You know, you've been around a while, but not taking the next step. You went away to take that next step. Someone like Shane Jennings, Leo Cullen, they did the same thing. Just maybe we should be thinking differently in Ireland now. Our player base is now really broad, and we're trying to shuffle them around the provinces. But you know what? Maybe we should be thinking wider.
No, I agree. I actually see a lot of players who are stuck in a backlog in the likes of, you know, Leinster in particular, Munster as well. And they're not going to get an opportunity. They might get one game a month. And when you're 22 to 24, 25, you don't want to be part of the squad. You don't be training every week. You be playing matches. I mean, you play the game because you want to play games. Training was never a part of the game I enjoyed. So I do believe that young guys should take an opportunity, because you'll either sink or swim. And if you go abroad and you go well in another club, it could be the best thing that could ever happen to you. And then all of a sudden the Irish provinces might be delighted to get you back. Look at Chris Farrell. You know, he went to Grenoble and played out of his skin, and he had Joe Schmidt on the phone to him every second week. So it definitely works, but it is a gamble at the same time.
Yeah. Tag Burns, another good example of that.
Yeah.
You know,
well, there's a lot of players, the likes of Tag Burn. You know, there's a lot of guys pick up injuries, and all of a sudden, if you pick up a few injuries at the wrong time, you fall down the pecking order. And that's clever business by the Scarlets to pick up guys like that. But there's a mountain of young players from Leinster who aren't playing much rugby, and I think some of them are so talented. You know, they do so well to get over and get a season or two of rugby under their belts.
Tommy, what was it like going to? I mean, your choices were Swansea or Leicester. I mean, it was going to be a change from what you were used
France,
to.
is this what you're going to say?
No, well, but it was going to be a change for you as well. And what part of that either scared you or invigorated you? Because again, a lot of the Irish guys, some of them can make it seem like a big deal to go from Dublin to Galway for, you know, it's 2 hours drive. It's the same, you know, there's not much too different. It's just smaller scale. What was going through your mind about actually leaving home and not being, you know, a quick drive away from mum and dad's house and your friends and all that sort of stuff?
Listen, Swansea wasn't really a big worry for me. It was just joining another squad. I actually didn't know any of the Welsh players, any of the Ospreys guys. I remember playing for Ireland against Wales. I just got myself back into the Irish team when it was announced that I was going, and it was actually Gavin Henson and Adam Jones who came over and had a pint of Guinness with me, and that was the first time I'd ever actually sat down and chat to the guys. So I was nervous, like anybody joining a new team, and particularly in rugby, you know, teams are very close knit. They're you know, to try and break into that, and certainly I was leaving behind a very close knit group. You know, a lot of my friends within that Ulster side, we were very, very tight, and I felt I was kind of, I was maybe not stabbing them in the back, but maybe, you know, jumping off the ship whenever things weren't going great there. And I know, you know, a lot of them were disappointed in me. So it was a bit of baggage with it, but I wanted an opportunity. I felt I needed a bit of a kick up the ass. I needed to try something different. And, you know, Swansea wasn't that far away, and it turned out it was great because, you know, I had family and friends and all sorts coming over nearly once every 2 or 3 weeks. So, you know, they all loved a night out in Swansea.
And they got the Mumbles Mile, Tommy.
Yeah, it wasn't the Mumbles Mile. It was Wine Street.
Wine Street, yeah.
Was the £12 in, all you can drink was a fairly tasty one for a lot of the Irish people coming over to some of the bars.
Very good.
Paul, what were your tactics for stalking Tommy and the rest of your Ospreys heroes at the time?
Well, I was just going to say, because Tommy, I know he's been a British Lion, but all of that pales into insignificance when you realise you are still, to this day, my mother's favourite player. And
I'm proud of that.
As soon as when she finds out you've been on, she'll be swooning. Yeah, you know, I'm from Gowerton, so, you know, the Ospreys are my region, and I used to watch Swansea.
Country, isn't it? Yeah.
Dan Bigger. Yeah, we've had them. Liam Williams from Gowerton, Dan Bigger, Sam Davis. I was the worst genetically, rugby speaking, to come from Gowerton. Ben Whitehouse, the referee. That's right. Gowerton's a breeding ground. But that Osprey squad that you were a part of, it was unbelievable. I mean, they've been voting for it this week, which we're going to touch on later.
Superbly
cool.
But, you know,
it was. It's all about the recruitment, Sean. I've always told you that. But you just need to look at the players in that squad and how good they were with the players who weren't picked in that team. You know, Sonny Parker wasn't even mentioned in that all-time Osprey squad. Rhys Webb was nowhere near, and I think that tells you the quality then when you had like Tommy Bowe there. You know, and that just genuine elite world-class players in that backline. And still to this day, you know, Tommy is an Ospreys player to most. You know, Ulster fans won't want to hear that, but he's considered an Osprey by an awful lot of people.
Well,
so it's
brilliant memories there. You know, some great games, and I see you have the Scarlets behind you there. Those games against the Scarlets, I think in Ireland, it's the Munster against Leinster game. It's the big rivalry, the big derby match. Ulster against Leinster is definitely a big one that we feel. But, you know, I got a real taste of it whenever I got over there to see the Scarlets against Ospreys. That was feisty. And those are the games I used to love going over to Clonethley and playing and beating them in Boxing Day or at home in the Liberty. You know, those were games I used to really enjoy. And even now, they're the games that the Ospreys supporters want to talk to me about.
Yeah, I bet. And you know, I was just going to ask one more question. When Sean touched upon, because I always use a term as being like an ultra utility. You know, when you can play 3 positions at test level. Did you ever fancy like move into full back permanently? Because I know you played at 13 a few times with Sean and for the Lions. But did you ever fancy 15? Because you used to play there quite a lot.
I played a bit when I was younger, but my kicking wasn't good enough. Sean wouldn't pick at me because I didn't have a Lee Byrne torpedo boot. He'd throw me in there for the big games, and I remember he threw me in for that game against Munster and Thomond, and all I got was bombs all day on me. But yeah, I grew up full back with the position I played at underage, but wing was kind of where they stuck me in. And what I loved about wing, unlike 13, I'm 15 to a sense, but the way the Ospreys played and the way I tried to take that back into Ireland was that the wing was a roving role. Right. And I remember Johnny Sexton used to drive him up the wall because he'd swing back, you know, expecting me to be on the wing, and I'd be off at first receiver going the other direction. Yeah. And we used to have some serious fallouts on the pitch over that. But you know, it's the way I played, and I think I owe an awful lot of that to the Ospreys. It was good times, and to try and take that back to Ulster again was something, and to see the likes of Jacob Stockdale and guys coming through to try and encourage them to get involved in the game as much as they can. You know, that's where I tried to influence it when I came back.
Tommy, I don't think we can let you go without Sean filled us in another talent that you developed over in Swansea. And
which one, Sean?
Yeah,
there's so many, but
this is the part of the show where technology will either fail us or delight us. But I'm just going to play in a little bit of audio that Sean has managed to get his hands on. So.
Oh wow! Hopefully it's not the Wine Street one.
Do you remember this?
Yeah. I actually.
Where did it all go wrong, Tommy? Where's the music career?
It sounds a lot. It sounded a lot better at the time. I did one for Wine Street, and it was Wine Street Saturday night. Anyway, looking for a fight, and they actually plugged it in. We got them to plug it in the walkabout, and they played it over the whole place.
Oh my God.
It was the best day of my life. Yeah. So that was my one and only hit. When things were going well, sure, it was good to enjoy it. But Sean Holley, mates for life. That's it.
It was my 200th game. My 200th game as Ospreys coach, and I'm down the front of the bus, and maybe these phones weren't as advanced as they are these days. Tommy's got this bit of software on his phone, whatever. He's made this at the back of the bus after the big win or something, and something crops up on my phone. I play it. Sean, what the hell is this? Some DJ has sent me some music. It's Tommy Bowe, but it's very endearing because he says some nice things on there, but not so much about my facial hair. Which, there you go.
Yeah. Well, listen, if some of the Irish supporters remember my singing, it's I think it generally is after a pint or two. I think I have this a great musical tone, but listening to it back, I know I don't.
We might leave Mr. Bowe escape while he has his dignity somewhat intact.
Guys, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tommy.
Catch up soon, man.
Cheers.
Tell you what, lads, will we talk about that 2009 PRO14 Dream Team that Adam sent around?
Oh yeah,
I think we should.
Definitely.
Can I just say something before we go on to that? And I'm glad you guys brought up the Ospreys Ultimate 15. They did that for all the regions. So they have an Ultimate 15 the fans have all voted for. And now they're taking everyone from those teams and they're voting them in as the Welsh Ultimate 15.
Yeah.
But that Ospreys team that
It's
gets
ridiculous.
voted in is absolutely insane. And I've got it here in front of me. I'm just going to read out the Ospreys team. And Sean, I'm going to be stunned if you didn't coach. I think you coached pretty much all these guys. Okay, front row, Duncan Jones, Richard Hibbard, Adam Jones. Second row, Ian Evans, Alan Wynne-Jones. Back row, Jerry Collins, Justin Tipuric, Ryan Jones. 9 and 10, Phillips and Bigger. 12 and 13, Henson and Bishop. And then your back three, Shane Williams, Lee Byrne, Tommy Bowe. I mean, that's
unbelievable.
That's a team that coaches itself, really, isn't it?
Well,
You say it.
There's a sly dig.
You
Sean,
say it.
I wouldn't stand for that. Jesus, shots fired.
Have you seen that Burt Reynolds film, Mean Machine? That's what it was like, right? Pulling all these brilliant individual thugs together and then trying to get them to play as a team. But
I was just about to say, the talent was there. I'm sure the egos and the personalities, that's where you must have come to the fore, keeping that all together.
When you think about it, I will defend the Galacticos thing and say it took a while to nurture a squad, to build a squad. I've said this on the podcast before, it does take a time. And you match that up against a 2009-10 Munster team. You'll be looking at the Munster team going, my God, look at that. Or you match it up against a Toulouse team, you're thinking, oh my goodness, or a Leicester team. So, it's apples for apples. But when you think about it, around that time, that's roughly the team where they would have played in the 2010 Celtic League final. You take Duncan Jones out of there and put Paul James.
Yeah.
You take Richard Hibbard out, put maybe Hugh Bennett or Mevin Davis. You could put Ian Goff in the second row. You could have picked Marty Holland at 7. Jonathan Thomas at 6. You could have picked Reece Webb at 9. You could have picked James Hook.
And Phil Tier. He's on the bench.
Phil Tier, isn't it? So yeah, it's probably the biggest regret. And we'll probably talk about this on every podcast. Why didn't we win the Heineken Cup? I don't know. Poorly coached.
I actually think that at some point that there is a documentary on that Ospreys team, and I suppose the unfulfilled potential. But it is just, you look back at it and you look at the talent. It is, and I know what you're saying. The Heineken Cup is probably where you think that is the team that should have made a mark for Wales in that competition. But Jesus Christ, there was a couple of off days maybe in Europe, but every other day of the week, in the league, there's just some special performances,
Yeah, I mean, that was beautiful. I mean, it was at that time I was watching them regularly as a supporter, and some of the rugby they used to play then, it was, you had everything in that team, didn't you, Sean? You had ball carriers everywhere, like really good defensive backs. Lee Byrne running those angles, and then if he's not the option, you've got Shane Williams and Tommy Bowe.
Well, we'll see the dream team now, and that probably highlights it. But it says a lot for the selection as well. Because when you're going to have an embarrassment of riches, you have to get the selection right. Mm-hmm. And so when I look back, the Welsh team to win 4 titles and nothing since 2012, by the way. Then it was a real period, and such a short period, so 2003. So we got barely 2.5 years to the 20-year anniversary. That seems ridiculous to me, but it would be nice maybe to do something around the 20-year anniversary. And some of the players that have gone through the jersey, it's just unfortunate that we're in a situation where, 8 years is a long time without any silverware. And you have to question whether you'd come back. You look at the strength of the Irish provinces. Edinburgh now, the way, and Glasgow, the way they've kicked on. Are we ever going to see it again? And that's sad. But what it does, it really heightens what was built and what we had back then. So, yeah, special times.
Well, I suppose I had to put together in one document, which I'm not going to share the screen here because we don't have the graphics department, haven't been all over this. I haven't put them to task on it yet. But going through, there was for the league, there's been a dream team every year since 2006, and they're always cause talking points because they're voted on by the media, and there's a eligibility. You usually have to play a certain amount of games. So in the previous years, some of the biggest name players don't always get considered because they don't play enough. But when I looked at this 2008-2009 team, and this is, I'll go through it slowly so you can all jump in with your thoughts. But I'll start off with the pack. You need a front row of Gethin Jenkins, Jerry Flannery, Adam Jones. You need a second row, Paul O'Connell, Alan Wynne-Jones.
Jesus.
And your back row, this is this our back row, Rocky Elsom, Martin Williams, and Jamie Heaslip.
I would put that back row and second row up against
Anything.
almost any pairing,
Yeah.
almost any combo in a back five.
Yeah. Especially at second row. I mean, doesn't get much better than that, really.
That was the funny thing that, again, we're just going to keep referencing this bloody Lions game. Like, Alan Wynne-Jones comes on as a sub.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, Simon Shaw and Paul O'Connell start, and Alan Wynne comes on. And
He had a fine head of hair, Alan
He
Wynne,
did.
that day as well. I really noticed that popped off the screen at me, yeah.
Yeah. He had a sort of pre-Schalkberger,
Yeah, big time.
that
Yeah.
sort of look.
Loved it.
Well,
Nah.
think of that as a front row to put on a pitch. Gethin Jenkins, Jerry Flannery, and Adam Jones. Like, the three of them are ballers. They're not just scrummagers. They're not just there to do the grunt. Those three boys, you put the ball in their hands and stuff will happen.
Yeah. Especially Gethin. I think he changed the role of a loose head prop, really, didn't he? Before him, I couldn't really think of many, like, out and out, like, ball in loose heads, whereas now it's a given. You think of Mako Vanapola and Ellis Genge and plays like that.
Keeney.
And that's just a given,
Yeah,
isn't it, now,
Goodwin.
as a loose head? You're half prop, half open side.
The thing with Gethin was he had a huge engine and was quick and explosive, fast twitch sort of guy, but very knowledgeable rugby player. So, you know, he's not the happiest of blokes in the world, Geth. You know, Melon as he's known, but intelligent rugby player, durable, doesn't suffer fools gladly. Played across on the tight end as well. Don't forget a little bit to do a job. But every player that I have worked with or post-rugby, post-coaching, have worked with or spoken to, rate him extremely highly as a rugby player. So it's no surprise he's in there.
Yeah, I look at the because I know we've a big topic to talk about, so I'll move on to the halfback pairing: Mike Phillips, Ronan O'Gara. You know, it's almost like what was it Donegal O'Callaghan used to say about Rog, is that you had to look after him like your little sister. I couldn't think of a better bouncer to put beside Ronan O'Gara than Mike Phillips.
Well, Rog could handle himself, mind, and he had great banter. I'll never forget. Do you remember young Matthew Jones, blonde head boy, played 10 for us around about 2005. He's a short, small guy, a bit chopsy. And we went for a bit of kicking practice on tour. And Rog was there on his own, to be fair, with a bag of balls, nice as pie. Now, this game on Friday night was a real feisty game. Ryan Jones got sent off after 5 minutes for clogging someone in the head. And it was tight and tetchy in horrible conditions, and Henson was playing at 12, and Matthew Jones was playing at 10, and Matthew was only little blonde guy, and Rog was winding him up all game. He was winding Henson up, and he kept saying to Hendo, on a scrum, Hendo, come on, I'm going to send you straight down there at him now, pointing at Matthew, young Matthew, and Henson's going, come on, I can kill you all, and they were talking about this at half time. So anyway, he's saying, Hendo, I'm going to send you down to this 10 channel now. Look at this. And Matthew was getting wound up about it. And so at the end of the scrum, he walks past and he brushes into Rog like that. And he starts to give him the big one. And Rog just turns to him and say, oh, what are you doing here? The under 12s are playing tomorrow morning.
That's fantastic.
Just dropped him. Matthew's like this.
No.
And just had the banter and the experience, but he can handle himself, that's for sure. But yeah, Mike Phillips, I suppose, is a legacy of playing across 3 Welsh regions there, as well, and the experience in the league. So, and again, he's a player that everybody that plays with him want him in the team, because Mike's a real tough man's man, extra forward, you know, big man, kick the ball well, pass well, run. All the players want him in the team, so it's no surprise he's in there either.
He's so big. Do you know when you meet him when he's wandering around Cardiff? Because I'm 6'3", and he's easily taller than me. 6'2", 6'3". He's like his eye line's above mine, and you think that for a scrum half, and he's not slim either, is he? You know, he's built like a 6, isn't he? If he put on, class, man, Mike Phillip.
I've actually been there outside pitch in Cardiff, having a few beverages with Paul, and it's a lovely viewing spot, and whereas most red-blooded males will be jumping up and down at some of the sites walking past, the most excited Paul got was when Mike Phillips walked past at one point. He was heading off somewhere, and immediately Paul's head was turning. He was, some character as well. I'll go to the centres and actually it's an interesting one. Brian O'Driscoll gets in on this, but the one that's really interesting, the inside centre, is Lefemi Maffey from Munster.
Yeah,
and I would argue that if you look back at how they've tried to recruit that midfield position in the last 12 years, that Maffey probably not necessarily a name that rolls off most rugby fans' lips, but he's probably one of the best centres. Him and Trevor Halstead, probably one of the best centres pound for pound that they've had, because they've cycled a lot of guys through there. And I'm pretty sure they'll have hit the nail on the head with that chap from South Africa who's going to play there next season. But
yes, reasonably talented signing. You know, the first thing that jumped out to me with Lefemi Maffey was his partner during that campaign, who was injured quite a lot, Rua Tupoki. Rua Tupoki was one of the best centres that has ever played in this championship.
Hey, I'm going to challenge this because I know you only mention this because you want to sing the Rua Tupoki song.
No,
that's your forfeit. You mentioned Rua Tupoki. You've got to sing the Rua Tupoki song.
I'm a dub.
They wanted that though. They wanted that type of player, didn't they? Because was it Sammy Tuipulotu?
Yeah,
he's another one of that ilk. Once Maffey got there, because he was young coming over, Maffey, if I remember, and established himself and got a run of games, you know, without any injury worries. He was a handful. So they had a recipe of having that get across the gain line. And I remember Sammy Tuipulotu as well. He was low centre of gravity, step very quick at a quick pace, difficult to bring down in that 10-12 channel. And then you'd bring your Munster forwards onto it and they'd get into that grind. Very difficult to stop. So I'm surprised Brian's in there. He must have played 10 games that year, did he? So he's qualified.
He must have. I'll have to go through the stats because
not a big bite there from you, Adam. Not a big bite.
No.
He must have played 10 games.
I've got something in the back pocket here. I'm going to wait till Adam to finish the team because this is great.
Okay. What we will be doing some content on each of these teams, and
there's a lot of sniping on this pod, gentlemen. This is COVID bullying. This is.
I know. I'm only drinking tea as well.
What's the back three?
Right, your back three is Lee Halfpenny on the left wing, Lee Byrne a fullback, and Tommy Bowe.
Oh, look at that!
So what year was this?
2008-2009 season.
No shame.
Can I remind you that who was the World Player of the Year in 2008?
Yeah. Shane Williams.
Oh, sorry, did we mention him?
Yeah, that is weird, isn't it? And he'd have played enough games to the Ospreys.
I'm going to go check the stats.
Loads.
I'm going to go check the stats.
Yeah, check. This is a fix-up.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Okay, can I I need to jump into this because that's what I was wondering looking at the team. So I was looking back through some of the media reports at the time, okay? And I happened upon the one on the Munster Club website. And it just starts off and there's so much shade. As is always the case in these instances, there will be some raised eyebrows at the selection. Lee Halfpenny, for example, who makes the team despite starting in just 5 of the Cardiff Blues 18 outings, scoring 3 tries. In contrast, Doug Howlett started 3 times more often and ended up with 7 tries. But they continue, right? There's even like shade within Munster. So On a Friday night, when Orla Fortune presented the trophy to Munster captain Paul O'Connell, the Lions skipper immediately called his teammate Mick O'Driscoll forward to share the moment. This was in clear recognition of the role O'Driscoll played in Munster's run to the title. O'Driscoll played in 17 of Munster's 18 Magners League games, starting on 13 occasions, it was assumed, therefore, that he was just edged out by his colleague, who started just 7 times.
Jesus.
Well,
there has to be more. I love it. I love this.
Yeah,
stuff.
that's good.
I'm gonna have to launch an investigation into my former colleagues and see what exactly went down here. But do you know what's interesting? So the 2008-9 Celtic League season, Shane Williams only played 7 times, which must have counted against him. However, and Andy and Sean, I'm sure you will appreciate this. In those 7 appearances, he scored 5 tries.
Oh my God.
Shane Williams, reasonably good at rugby.
Yeah, he was reasonably good.
So,
why I'm trying to think why that is. The World Cup in 2007, wasn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
No, 2008-9. Must have been injured because he must have been injured.
And 2009 was the year that Brian O'Driscoll did not win World Player of the Year. So,
Yeah. So how many did Brian play in the league?
Good question. Hold on, here's Statman.
He does want to know as well. I recognise that face.
Yeah.
right, I am busy to here. McGeady, introduce the next segment there while I
We'll move on.
Yeah.
So something which Adam Redmond and others have asked us about before in the show, actually. If rugby had a draft system, how would this work? Now, we're not going to talk about whether it would work or it wouldn't work. We're just saying that if we were saying we had to have a draft system, what would we do? Okay, Mr. Redmond, with your American sports hat on, do you want to explain what a draft is?
Okay, so a draft is essentially a mechanism which ensures that parity, as best as possible, can be maintained, so that you don't have these dominant Leinster and Ospreys teams, winning title after title, etc. Constantly coming top. And there's various different things across American sports. Free agency, which is around player retention, salary caps, and the draft. It's all aimed at just making sure that if you're one of these big billionaires who comes in and buys a team, that every now and again in a cycle, you should have a chance of being reasonably successful. So draft essentially lets the worst teams each year have access to the best talent, in theory, coming out of the college game. So if you are the 32nd ranked team out of 32 in the NFL, you get the first pick for each of the 7 rounds in the draft. So essentially, you should be able to pick the best player in each round. Doesn't necessarily always work out like that, but that's the premise.
Yeah. Well, as I saw watching a little bit of the Michael Jordan documentary, he was drafted behind Sam Bowe. Which, if you know anything about 80s basketball, you'll understand that was a big mistake. Anyway, back to rugby drafts.
Now, if I need to explain about the NFL, you're definitely going to need to explain about basketball.
I think the difference with our league and obviously America is we've got different countries, haven't we? So I think if there were to be a draft system in the first instance, it would have to be inter-country. So we've got 4 Irish provinces, and then we are not talking about established players. We're talking about the cohort of academy or development players. So maybe it's the Irish under-20s team. Let's take it as the 15 guys picked by the Irish 20s coaches, that they are ranked 1 to 15, and then it would be in the case of the 4 Irish provinces, whoever finished the bottom province would get the first pick, and then so would go on for 4 picks. So let's say, for argument's sake, Leinster were bottom, because I don't want to be, they'd have first pick. Munster finished 3rd bottom, so they'd have 2nd pick. Connacht finished 2nd, so they'd have 2nd pick, and then so on and so forth, and round we go again. And the same for Wales, perhaps. Otherwise, if you're going across in the early stages of a potential draft, and allowing somebody like me at the Ospreys to go and pick the number 1 draft in Leinster. Can you imagine that? We'd never be allowed back in Dublin.
That's exactly the point of this conversation. I think what we should be putting, because this is obviously never going to happen, I would say we should consider this, that any player under the age of 21 who's not on a full senior contract, at the end of every season, they should be put into eligibility for a draft. And
I suppose but what's the point in ever developing young players then? That's the bit I always find unworkable.
We're going to inject reality into this conversation.
No, but even in American sport, their amateur and pro games are both massive and don't tend to feed off each other, do they?
Well,
there's no interrelationship.
It would be talent coming out of school then, because that's how it works in the States. The university want these guys for their collegiate career. So that's why it's a lovely clean break, and that's why these guys then make the next step into NFL. Well, that is a good point. You would then say, well, what would be, if Leinster was saying, why are we developing all these talents if other people can go and pinch them? But to be honest with you, it's but anyway,
here's my somewhat practical suggestion, right? Which is to go to another American sport, right? Baseball. So baseball they've got a draft just like the other sports, but they've also got another draft. It's the Rule 5 draft, and this means that you can protect all your players who are on your 40-man roster, but another team can put in a claim on someone outside that roster. Okay, they can claim that person, and then that player has to stay on their new team's roster for the rest of the season. I may be getting the details wrong, right? But that's the broad principle. Otherwise, they can go back. But this would be something, because remember what we were talking to Tommy about, the point I was making about players getting stuck in different areas, right? And maybe we have some way of doing this where we can do some sort of competitive loan situation where it might not be permanent. It might just be for the rest of the season. But if you've got a player out there who's a 4th choice fly half, and I'm stuck, I'm going to go, do you know what?
But in Ireland, that's probably one of the models that is best placed to do it, because it's all largely centrally owned. I mean, there's no reason that Ireland couldn't adopt that internally if they didn't want to, if they wanted to. They just stick all the talent, the new talent, in a pool, start of every 2-year cycle, and just say, right, which they do to a little bit of a degree. They try and spread some players around Connaught or whatever it might be, but there's no reason why that couldn't work in Ireland. It's different in Wales because nothing's easy in Wales. I'm not getting into that.
I've thought, Paul, I've had this thought since I finished in Bristol, really, and you could call it in this discussion the draft academy. Right, I thought of maybe getting some investors and setting up an educational type institution / pseudo-professional environment where it's almost like either a finish in school or a start in school, if you like, for those who don't get picked up at an academy level or get tossed out at academy level. Now, we see this quite a lot in Wales. All of a sudden, you see this guy that's got back into the Welsh team. Josh Adams being a classic example. Lewis Rees-Zammit. How on earth did he escape us? And the list goes on.
And all the boys at Bristol now, Sean.
I'm sure Callum
so many,
and so on. Ryan Edwards. I'm sure there's a load of Irish guys. Or there might be such depth in Leinster, for example, schools that there's a couple of guys who get disgruntled and then we lose to the game. We'll have a scouting system or a liaison system where you could pick up all those players, lift them up, send them to like a finishing draft academy where they get expert coaching, great tuition, extracurricular activity, future career advice, and so on, and education and a rugby development with experienced coaches who either don't want to coach anymore or by the same token haven't picked up further jobs in the coaching fraternity, and then get them to a level or a couple of fixtures whereby they could play the Leinster Academy, the Munster Under-20s, the Ulster A, whoever it is, with a second shot, if you like, and then we get a draft out of those guys. Right, these are our 10 guys that we've reformed and reinvigorated or showcased to you. You can draft them, but it's going to cost you.
Yeah, well, arguably that's what Hartbury is, isn't it? Even for us in Wales,
I wonder who started that.
But you know what? I
There's
tell you what, that would make a good TV format, though. If you took some players, I think they've done it for, with boxers who didn't quite make it. You can take some pros and give them another shot. I'd watch that.
There's a version of that in set up in Ireland a few years back, the Rugby Academy Ireland. Dan Van Zyl, he's set up something like that now. Honestly, it's a while since I looked at that. But yeah, very similar model. It's a paid private affair, but it's the same principle. Haven't got to the academy level, you want to keep playing in something which approximates an academy setup, to keep involved. It's something with some of the American guys.
I think
and
it needs to be ratified. I think it's all very well having an entity where private and you go off and do it, but I think it has to be ratified by the governing body and the teams, because there's a group of players that, let's be honest, we're not quite sure about, but we've got to make a decision on you. So I'll give you an example. In the early days of the Ospreys, the academy manager let Lee Halfpenny go. Wasn't big enough. Didn't think he'd make it. Well, bloody hell, what a mistake that was, wasn't it? So there's some guys who've got to make a decision. You might have 3 hookers. Well, I've got to make a decision. One of the other regions doesn't really want them. They end up going over to Bristol, Sale, Gloucester, whatever. They either make it or they don't. But if it could be ratified and a real entity supported, and it has some governance, and we all accept that, then we could have a draft system. If they do push through, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, and part of this would also be the link with the club game. That's something which in an ideal world people wouldn't get lost, because we'd be tracking them through the club game, which would feed perfectly into the provinces or regions, but we know that doesn't quite happen. Rory O'Connor and the Irish Independent.
I don't think people would say it perfectly works. I think, and this is coming from somebody who started his career reporting heavily on All Ireland League rugby and making that case. But I would even admit now that the further time has gone on, the distance between, you're talking about I'd be interested to know what the guys think about the Welsh Premiership equivalent. There's maybe 2 clubs in the All Ireland League that are capable of providing a player with the environment and the competitive setting to, progress them into professional rugby. And I think the rest of them are all just, if a guy ends up there by fluke and he's absolutely super talented, it'll happen. But otherwise, I think there's such a gap between semi-professional and professional now. It's just, well, I interrupted you, so my apologies.
No, it's a massive question in Welsh rugby at the moment. The gap between the Welsh Premiership and pro rugby, it's a big discussion topic, because like Sean says, you've got some players who are in academies and at regions who aren't playing at all. And then the Premiership, to me, doesn't seem to be of the right standard to be in that permanently. There seems to be a big gap there. But, things can't always be perfect. And rugby is one of those sports that's never going to be perfect. And I think we might just have to live with that little grey, fuzzy bit in the middle between amateur and pro. You'll always get some players who get stuck, some players that get lost. It's just like any profession, really.
When that British Irish Cup started, I remember going along to report on a Leinster A versus, it was a quarter final, and they were playing one of the Welsh Premiership teams, and just looking at the guys in their jerseys, we're like, they shouldn't be on the same pitch with each other. I don't know.
But it's extreme. The thing is, Sean will know better. You'll know better than anyone, Sean, because you had to handle. Who did you have? So you had Neath, you had Swansea, you had Aberavon.
And Bridgend,
Bridgend.
Well,
So how do you manage that?
there's Tommy Bowe just said it now, right? Boys just want to play, and from what I can see, I was one of those coaches. I was all over. I'd go and watch the semi-pro clubs on the weekend. I'd go to their training sessions. I'd go and watch the Ospreys under 20s and 18s. So I could be all over the young players.
Yeah.
Because they're the next things that you rely on. You can't just go and buy Justin Marsh and Jerry Collins and Marty Hollifield and TT every year, Tommy Bowe. So for me, I go and watch my club, Aberafon, and there's no Osprey players that play there. So there's guys I know who are not playing that weekend, who would walk into that team. Now, whether it's a professional player playing with a semi-pro or even an amateur, to me, it doesn't really matter. He's playing, particularly if he's a front five forward.
Right.
And I think back to, we used to have a chart where we'd have the whole squad. This is the team starting. This is the bench. These are the 2 players we're taking as cover. These are the injured players. These are players returning from injury. These are the other players in the squad who are fit. Right, these guys are playing for Neath. These guys are playing for Swansea. These are for Bridgend. These are for Aberafon. These are with Wales 7s, and these are with Wales 20s. Or every player, 50 players in your squad, everyone covered. If you're not in a resting or reconditioning or rehabbing phase, you play rugby.
Right.
So no surprise, my club, Aberafon. Rhys Webb played for them. Ashley Beck, Ryan Bevington, James King, Justin Tipperick.
Right.
All those 5 have played for Wales. But they would go and play semi-pro rugby. It strengthens that team. What about the 5 guys that they're replacing? Guess what? They go down to Division 1 and strengthen that, and there's a knock-on effect, you know.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, I think conditioners get involved too much now. Yeah, he's on a conditioning phase. What? He's learning to play rugby. He needs to play rugby.
Yeah.
And I think it's a problem. I really do, because I watch Wales under 20s in the World Cup. We don't get anywhere near it.
No. Can I ask one more question, Sean? Yeah, you said about particularly tight 5 players. Is that because they need to focus on conditioning more, or?
No, they need to play, mate, because
Right.
there's nothing better for a front rower to come up against a gnarly 32-year-old semi-pro guy who's a fitter or an electrician Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
But he's scrimmaged for the last 12 or 15 years.
Yeah.
Nothing better for a 19, 20-year-old prop who thinks he's a kid. He can bench press and shoulder press the world. But all of a sudden, he's come up against Joe Thomas from Mr. Gunlice, who's giving him a bit of a lesson and a tuning.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because all Joe Thomas is thinking about is scrummaging. He's never worrying about hitting rucks, is he?
Rugby player that kid's going to be, not a not a weightlifter.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my point, really. And I've sort of seen it slip away only because I go and watch the semi-pro clubs on a Saturday, and I think to myself, where are the regional players? I'm looking for the next up-and-coming regional player. There's no avenue for them now, and that's why. And I don't think this happens in Leinster because they play. I don't in the Irish Province. I think they do play because the union are involved, and I've seen Leicester 3rd teams beat good regional teams in the Pro14. And I just don't see that there's a route for them, a pathway. You know, if they don't make the Ospreys, the Scarlets or the Dragons or the Blues under 18s, they go, well, I'm not going to have a chance now. So I'll go work at McDonald's on a Saturday, and I'll go to CrossFit and look good.
Yeah, and get on the sunbed. That is what they do.
Jesus.
That's you you're talking about.
That's
You said you don't do the CrossFit.
No, exactly. Don't do the CrossFit.
Well,
Have 6 pints and then go to sunbed.
Well, Paul, I presume that's the future pathway for Mr. McGeady here, given he's wearing his, what did you call it, a scoop neck?
Scoop neck t-shirt. He's looking good. I like it. And he looks like he's got a bit of blusher on or something. He's definitely got makeup on.
Well, it might have been a glass of red wine before going on air.
Oh, you devil, you.
There was a good piece though by Rory O'Connor in the Irish Independent, which touches on something kind of related to this, and it could be a gift that COVID gives us. So what have we done with COVID? Everyone's having to stop. We can't play sport. We can't do anything. Well, things are going to start opening up. Now, one of the last ones might be big groups going travelling, and that would include sport. So in Ireland's case, and this might be the same in Wales, the same in Scotland, same in South Africa, well, can we play within our own borders? Okay, so then you couldn't just play Leinster against Ulster and do little intros. Well, what if you release all those guys back to their original AIL clubs where it all began? You know, come up with new regulations that says, well, yes, we can have X professionals, or you know, in a squad or whatever. Do you know what? It probably never happened, but I really like the thinking there, because it's saying, yeah, do you know what? We can use this reset to try and create this link that we have lost.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice idea. And, you know, over and above that, talking about the benefits of COVID-19 is a slight aside. But the other big benefit is these players will have repaired any damage they've got. I know we're all worrying about them not playing. But, you know, if you're Richard Hibbard, who's had, you know, I don't know how old he is now. How old's Hibbard now, Sean? 33?
34, yeah.
34, and the knocks and bumps he's had. I think having 8 weeks off will do players like that a lot of good. So I think that is one of the pluses. But like you say, if we could have like some of the Welsh sides, if we go back to Swansea, Neath, Aberavon and that lot for, I don't know, for 12 weeks, people will love that. They'll lap that out, get the vintage jerseys out, and off to go. That's very marketable. I'm already thinking about how to make money from it.
There you go. The branding brain is kicking in.
There we go. And we go back to their inaugural shirts.
Can I ask before we dive off into Paul's what's weird this week and listener questions, and to cap off our draft talk, I want to ask each of you, what's your position you're drafting, number one, and what's the player you're drafting?
Shall I go first?
Yes, because you've
got an answer.
Paul. Well done. Thank you, Paul.
See? And I'm going to answer this in the correct order as well, rather than the quantum way I did it in the first episode. So I am going to go for, and it's based on something I've written about, and I think I might have mentioned it on one of our podcasts, but I will go for second rows first.
Well done.
Because they are, if you look at the stats over Europe, they are the ones who are now earning the most. And my basic scientific evolutionary brain is that there aren't that many guys who were born that size, or women. You know, how many people do you know who are 6'8" with hands like shovels and whatever it might be, and can run and are fearless and can catch a ball and like getting hurt? So they would always be my first choice if you can get 2 or 3 of those. And it's one thing the Welsh regions haven't done particularly well, I think. But, you know, any of those, you know, Otoje, straight off the top, he'd be my first signing probably. Or I might go a bit cheaper. I'll go for Crewis.
I thought we were picking from the Pro14, Paul.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant globally. Oh, Pro14. Pro14, that's easy. That's James Ryan.
This is a discerning podcast. You're not just picking
Sorry, I think you meant globally.
If it's Pro14, that guy I saw in the World Cup, he looked good.
Well, if it's Pro14, it's James Ryan.
I think Paul's right with locks. Mark Bennett, who was my conditioning coach at the Ospreys, and then I took him to Bristol. He's a statistician as well as a conditioning coach, and as well as looking like a nightclub bouncer. He's the perfect conditioning coach, right? He's fit as you like. But you know, we were doing some work for years, you know, accumulating all of these stats and performance coding analysis that we're doing in every game. He crunched them all and eventually came up with a formula, almost trying to predict performance or predict results, if you like, based on selection and form and data. And for a long time, we recognized that if your second rows hit so many benchmarks in a game, so if, let's say, I'll throw these out there. If they missed less than 5% tackles, if they carried between 8 and 12 times in a game and made X amount of meters, that whatever it was, right? Key performance indicators, there would be a 90% plus chance of you winning the game.
My God.
Now, you know that there's factors that can contribute to that, refs' decisions, bounce of the ball, but that's what we were working towards. Cut a long story short, you know, second rows are really valuable. If you think about second row, they're involved in every facet of the game. Attack, whether it be ball carrying or certainly clearing rucks. Defense, making tackles around the fringes, counter-rucking or stealing the ball. Line out in attack, that either lifting or jumping or decoying, know all the calls. Line out defence, exactly the same. They're pushing in both ways of the scrum. They're primarily the guys that catch the kick off or have to lift or be lifted. They're in everything in the game. And how many leaders have we had, captains of teams, second rows? We named quite a couple tonight. So, yeah, who would I pick? First, I probably would go James Ryan. I think he does a lot of work. He's young enough, good value for money, got growth. Yeah, I go for him.
See, I knew what I was doing. I could have coached the Ospreys. Look at this.
Easy in a piece of cake.
I'm completely on the same page. I wouldn't have been a couple of years back because I think that the value in the scrum has changed. The scrum, the law changes, or rather the interpretation changes, and the referees have been told, no, listen, if it's playable, don't go straight for penalty. We want to get that ball out. So I think the scrum is less of a weapon now. And also our props do not play that long. So I will say, under the present game, I would say James Ryan is our number one pick in the draft.
I think he is.
One change to the game would change that. If we reduce the number of subs on a bench, I might pick Tyke Furlong first, because he'd probably play, say, 80 minutes most games instead of the current 50, 55, 60. And that to me would be a huge difference, because as a tight head prop, what you get from him is phenomenal.
Right, I'm gonna disagree with all of you.
Oh, hang on.
Somebody has to at this.
What's he going for?
The Lemmings all following Sean there.
Hey,
Paul
Lemmings.
went first. Paul went first.
Listen, Lemmings. We are following a professional coach here.
I'd actually be so I have my position that I know I would, if I was drafting for a Pro 14, that I would go to. Well, I'll tell you the position, but the type of players that would really, if I can pick any player from the get-go, the guys that would really entice me would be wingers and scrum halves, because they can influence. Scrum halves, a good one, can win you some really big games. But some of the wingers and fullbacks that can win you a game that you absolutely do not deserve. If you have James Lowe in your team, if you have Johnny McNichol in your team, these guys can save your bacon. See when that second row is injured, lads. See when he's not having a good game.
No.
Guess who rides to the rescue, okay?
Yeah. James Lowe scores 4 in the corner.
And by the way, James Lowe, you can chuck him in the back row if you're short as well. Like, he's a big beastie of a boy. But the position I'm going to go for, and I think it's because it's a position where there's just such a plethora of excellent players in it. I'm going to go for number 7. And it's a high-risk position because there's a lot of guys can get injured there.
Yeah.
But I look at guys like Benetton Bramstein. You look at Hamish Watson, Ollie Robinson. Ollie Robinson you'll have all season because he's never going to play for England. What a value for money signing he'd be. And he's in his mid-20s as well.
Or Will Boyd.
Or Josh McLeod. Some of those guys.
Any of those guys.
Tane Basham.
Tane Basham. Class.
You want to talk about upside and, huge space there before he hits the ceiling. But the two guys that I would be torn to pick first would be between Justin Tipperick and Josh van der Fleer. And age may not be on Justin Tipperick's side, but history shows he's generally available, even when he is playing for Wales. He doesn't get injured too often. And my God, there are centres playing in every competition in the world that don't have his footballing ability. And the other one, and this is where I hate to go back to the madding crowd here because everybody's picking a Leinster player, but Josh van der Fleer is phenomenal.
Class.
His work rate, and this is what I would challenge anyone. Next time you're watching him play, no matter what, with Guinness Pro 14, Champions Cup, playing international rugby, watch Josh van der Fleer, because everyone sees the red scrum cap and he's good at getting turnovers. But just look at how much movement that red scrum cap makes. He is everywhere. He is relentless. He carries, he tackles and tackles and tackles. And like we see these tackle records and high percentage volume tackles made by second rows who are essentially pillar defenders all the time, and they should be making those tackles. But when you start seeing guys in the back row do it, and Justin Tipperick's no stranger to this either, guys like Ollie Cracknell, really, really good, in terms of making these hits. If you're playing in the back row and you're doing all the other things that you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to be mobile and you're supposed to be making your tackles, so yeah, I'm not trying to be contrary. That's just my
I think that's a
style of
good
rugby
point.
played in the tournaments, and I see how earning a turnover can get you tries. And that's the way I think some of the teams are coached, that a turnover equals an opportunity for 7 points.
Do you know, an interesting point about back row forwards, because I was looking at the average wages in the top 14 per position, right? So lock was the highest, and then 10, I think it was 10, 15, and then tight head. But one of the lowest paid wages was open side flanker. And it's weird, whenever I come on this podcast, I always start thinking about the NFL, because I know how much you love it. And I was watching one of those, follow a team for the season. And there was a thing on there saying about how running backs' wages have decreased massively over the last 20 seasons, because it's now become a passing game, and that the running backs get injured so often that they just treat them like sausages, basically, in a machine. So it's like you get a new one in every 3 years. He carries himself to death, gets really messed up, and then get another one. And it's almost like that has happened to a lot of open sides. You look at like Sam Warburton, for instance, you look what's happened to Ellis Jenkins, who's in the middle of it now. That position's become so untenable, isn't it, as a long-term career? You just can't play it until you're sort of 35 or 34. And I'd wondered if there was a draft system or whatever we're talking about theoretically, whether, the 7 isn't worth spending your money on, really, because there's a pretty good chance by the time they're 28, they'll be hobbling around.
And that's why Sean shaking his head at me.
No, I'm not shaking. I'm not shaking head. It's a really interesting conversation. It is, because the worm has turned, isn't it, a little bit with regards to 7s. We're seeing less challenging at the ruck or the jackal. How many of them are useful in the line out? How many of them are real good ball carriers? Tipperick and Van der Fleer are exceptions to the rule. But the other argument is then they're not worth as much because, do you know what? There's so many of them. There's another one off the ramp. So there's that. But it's a really interesting conversation. I was thinking while you were talking there of a lot of it is to do with what your particular team requires as well. We may not require a second row. I remember when, unfortunately, the Celtic Warriors, the demise of in 2004, it was essentially a draft between the Welsh regions, because all those players, and there was great players in there, went into a room and the other regions, surviving regions, were bartering for who they wanted. And the number 1 pick, do you know who he was?
Gethin Jenkins?
Ian Goff.
Ryan Jones.
Was he really? Of course he was.
In terms of age, value for money and position, he was a bargain, up and coming. Those who did their homework, and we got him. Everyone wanted him. We got him. He transformed us the following season, along with David Bishop and Sonny Parker. So, again, he suited what we needed. Luckily, that season, Alan Wynne and Ian Evans came along as well. So before you know it, the juggernaut was going. But see, Ryan was an out-and-out 8 at the time, and later became a 6 and a 4, so his versatility crept in. So it could be a kicker, it could be one team might require a kicker and value. I like you watched that Michael Jordan thing. He came out, I think, as the 3rd pick.
Yeah, 4th, behind Sam Bowe.
4th, sorry. And fate plays a part, because whoever was making the first pick back in 80, whatever it was, could have easily picked any one of them. But they went for, by the time it came to the Chicago Bulls, the next one off the ramp was Michael Jordan. Can you believe? Can you believe how lucky in hindsight you'd be? Oh, we got Michael Jordan. Well, he became the best ever basketballer in the history of the game.
Yeah. And probably athlete. He's probably the best. In my book, he's number 1 athlete. I've got
the worst actor,
and the worst actor.
You know,
mind you, Space Jam did all right. The box office.
Do you know
I'm all about the numbers.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting? Not one of us. Do you know? Not one of us mentioned an out half. And,
No.
That's weird.
Yeah, I think they're hugely overrated.
I just think it's weird.
That we didn't pick one. Is this a segue into my weird column?
I was trying to nudge it that
I
way.
know. I've just figured, and you wanted me to just go. Tell you what else is weird.
Honestly, McGeady's asleep at the wheel. That's
Right. I haven't got anything as good as the turkey egg because that's pretty tricky. So 2 things this week that caught my mind. One, when I was driving around, and a little known problem that I haven't seen discussed on the news or in any forums about COVID is if you go out in the car and you need a piss or worse, you've got a massive problem because there are no cafes or pubs open. It happened to me this week. So, and you wouldn't have thought about it because you're just thinking, oh, it's okay. If I need to go to the toilet, it'll be fine because I'll just go to a pub or a cafe. There's nothing. There's nobody there for you. So that's the first thing. And then the other one, because I was dredging around on YouTube, just looking for any sport to watch. And then I came across, I can't even remember what they're called. There's a name in ice hockey for the player who just messes people up, like an enforcer. What are they called? The goon. The goon.
Yeah.
The goon. And then it dawned on me that ice, because I'm often trying to think, what's the hardest sport in the world to master? So I always think it's golf first, because it's to play that at the top level is so difficult to get that ball to do what you want. So I always put that first, and then snooker I normally have second to play elite, because it's so difficult to play elite. And then, but then I realized that ice hockey is definitely the hardest sport in the world, because you've got to learn 2 sports before you can even start. So you have to learn ice skating and then hockey, which isn't something you have to do with other sports, is it? Because when you say if you're playing football, you already know how to run. So you've got half of the game there. So they were my 2 things. So ice hockey is the hardest sport, and do not go out if you need to urinate during this COVID crisis.
The long winter nights must fly by in your house.
Tell you what, my wife, she's a God lover.
Have you seen Slapshot?
Yes, I have seen
Brilliant.
Slapshot. Great film.
Slapshot is phenomenal.
Yeah,
Holy
really
man.
good film. Yeah, really good film.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.
I came across something. It's just a fun fact, but something that absolutely gobsmacked me this week. Do you know how much a spacesuit costs?
I only do because you sent it to me. It's unbelievable.
No, this is Sean and Andy. Seriously, see, like so an astronaut's suit that they wear now up to the space station. Do you know how much it cost?
I'm gonna have a guess here, right? Look, space travel.
It's cheaper than that Osprey squad.
Really?
No, it's not.
No, it's not. It's nowhere near.
I'm thinking. The thing that came into my mind was $1 million.
Not even close. You're gonna have to raise the roof.
Really? Yeah, it's amazing.
So per spacesuit.
Yeah.
Spacesuit.
One suit.
Jesus. Okay, so it's like 7.
Okay, minds will be blown here. 250 million.
Get off.
Right?
No. Not believing that.
Now, and here's the next step, right? Out of the original 30 or so, or even less, that were made since the Apollo era, so for the last 40 years, they now have 4 fully functional suits left. There is 8 of them, or maybe a bit more, that are in various states of disrepair and need to be revamped. But there are
need a quick iron.
There are currently 4 that they can actually use. And
it's amazing, isn't it? 200 look at Sean's face.
You do like your space stuff, Adam.
It's really good, though.
Yeah.
The YouTube algorithm served it up to me. And I might say the YouTube algorithm, which, by the way, will also be serving you up under the sticks now that we are video and we are on the Pro14 official channel all the time. The snippets.
You were on fire with your segues this week, my friend.
Oh, absolutely. That one was spontaneous, which is even better.
I'm gonna really work hard. My homework is I feel really bare without the background. You know, I'm not part of William Webb Ellis, Hadley Parks, or Bloemfontein Stadium. So I'm gonna work hard to get an Apollo NASA background next week.
Nice. Yeah.
And a $250 million spacesuit.
Yeah.
Hadley Parks, but meanwhile, we'll be calling the police when he sees this episode.
I know. Look at that. He's not on Twitter, thank God. Otherwise,
Before
I'd be on some kind of register.
The Twitter register, yeah. Before we go, shout out to Elwyn Gwilym, and apologies if I butchered your name. Sent in 2 questions. I'm going to go with the second one because I think it's great. Nod to COVID and rugby. Any merit in applying social distancing rules to defensive lines just to open up the pitch? I like it.
Yeah, we'll have that.
Nice, like that.
That's a wrap. Thank you, Tommy Bowe. Thank you, Sean Holley. Thank you, Paul Williams. Thank you, Adam Redmond, for pulling us all together. That was Under the Sticks. My name is Andy McGeady. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
On the butter.